This week, I'm going to take you behind the scenes and walk you through a simple but cool one-light setup for a beauty shot and show you how I added a texture to the background. It's another last frame, how the shot was made. Stay tuned.
You're watching TOGCHAT Live, the only live show dedicated to the hows and whys behind creating consistently great photographs. Here's your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, welcome to episode number 239 of TOGCHAT. I do hope you're all healthy and, of course, still wearing a mask, practicing your social distancing. We got to get through this thing, right? Most of you know the drill, but just in case you're new to TOGCHAT, now's the time. Check in, leave a comment. Let me know you're here and where you are in the world. I've got Lynn sneaking in here at the last minute from New York, Nick in Brooklyn, Ken is here from Cheshire in the UK, Lawrence in Rugby, England, John down the road in Harrisburg, April's here from Missouri, Bad Garrig, I probably got that wrong, but I hope that's right, in Birmingham in the UK, Patrick in Paris, Gabe down in Miami, Alvin in Virginia, we got Eric in a very cold, very frigid Texas, Dean also in the UK, Neil in Florida, David in San Diego, Joe in Michigan. You folks are awesome. Even Robert in New Jersey and Matthew in New York. And of course, my favorite username, FN89 in Ottawa. Thank you so much for being here, gang. Seriously. All of you are part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch or listen to TOGCHAT every week. And for that, I'm going to work really hard to help you with your photography in the next 60 minutes. And it would help a lot more people find out about TOGCHAT if you could do me a solid. Hit that thumbs up down below the video, down there, right? The more thumbs up, the more YouTube will recommend the show to other photographers. And of course, hey, while you're down there, feel free to hit that share button. Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. You can share the link, tog.chat/live. I just dropped it into the chat window for you. Feel free to copy that. Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest way to get the word out. And if you are a member of any photography clubs or groups, please let them know about TOGCHAT. Don't keep it all to yourself. And don't forget to check out the TOGCHAT Photography Podcast. I'm going to share the link for that in the chat window for you right now. If I can get my mouse to go to the right place, there it is. Okay. Podcast, it's a great way to get your weekly fix while you're editing or retouching. And each episode of the podcast includes content that you are not seeing here on YouTube. So don't miss out. The show's available on iTunes, Google, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and pretty much anywhere you like to get your podcast fix. This week, the podcast will go live tomorrow morning around 10 a.m. Eastern Time in the U.S., and it features a special discussion about critiques and feedback that you won't see here tonight in the live stream. So make sure you check it out. So let's go ahead and dive in. You folks seem to really enjoy when I did the last frame walkthrough 2 weeks ago. So I have got another walkthrough for you tonight. We're going to start out with a simple one-light beauty shot that I did that was honestly really all about the makeup. That was the idea behind the shot. In fact, let me go ahead and we'll make it a little bit bigger here. Whoops, too big. There we go. Okay. So the task here was feature the makeup and really create the right mood to go with the shot, right? That was the whole idea. So what I'm going to do for you is I've got a short little video clip since you guys love to see the behind the scenes stuff, and you'll be able to hear me during this clip. I'm going to go show you kind of two angles of the setup. I lit it with one beauty dish. The model is sitting right in front of a seamless paper background from Savage. You'll see that in a moment, okay? So let me go ahead and play this, and I'm going to leave my mic live so that I can kind of talk over this clip a little bit in a few places to just give you some background. And I may also kind of start and stop the clip as we go, just so that you can get some extra information, some things that I want to point out to you. All right, so let's dive into this here, right? So I'm going to pause it really quick, and you can see dead center in the frame. And this is an older shot, so this is back when I was using the Interfit Honey Badgers. You can see that in the beauty dish. It's a 21-inch beauty dish that is sitting just to the left of the camera. Remember, this angle is an angle, so the camera right now is off center a little bit. So the dish is sitting just a little bit to camera left, quite a bit high. I am shooting tethered. You can see the view with the Olympus Capture software there on the laptop screen, okay? And here we go. Now I want you to notice as I get started, once I know that I'm dialed in with my exposure for my test shots, I'm going to give the model some basic directions.
Now I need that tilt, but while you're on the tilt, ever so slight, turn the face. Keep the tilt. That's kind of weird. Yep, now turn your nose up. This is perfect. Yep. I'm going to come like right past here, right there. Okay? Just looking at that spot.
Now notice a couple of things. Going into the shot, since the makeup is obviously very unusual and full of detail, I didn't want to try and do some kind of like, oh, she's pretty and dreamy type of an image. I had it in my mind that I wanted no affect. That means blank stare. I also knew that I wanted to do awkward things with her posture and pose, if you will, because I'm clearly posing her. There's not going to be any modeling happening. We're not going to see any click pose. I'm working with very deliberate details that I want to be able to show off here. That's why I have the head back and bent so far. But I also want you to notice that as I go through these, I'm giving her very specific places to look. The reason why I'm controlling that is that I want to make sure that regardless of whether she's looking at my camera or whether I have her looking away, I want the pupils centered in the eyes. Even with all the detail and the makeup and the beads that are on her face, I want lots of impact from the eyes. So here we go. I'm going to let this continue. Now what I'm doing is I'm basically trying a couple different variations to get a feel for how my idea is coming together. You see, I'm giving her some small variations. And this is really kind of the first idea in my head that I'm working through. Now I'm going to work around, go high, go low, go to one side, go to the other side, and I'm looking for other options. You guys frequently hear me talk about the concept of work the shot. I did the first shot the way that I imagined it, and the way that I imagined it was kind of looking up at her and have her staring up towards the light. But the reality of it is, I really wasn't liking it that much. It was a nice shot because of the makeup. People would look at it and say, wow, cool. But once I got to that point where I started working the camera all the way around, instead of standing there and kind of be like, what could I do next? I kept taking pictures. I'm shooting different angles and different, crops, getting closer on some of them, backing up on others to see what kind of sparks my interest.
Down to me, right there.
You can see now I'm working at a higher angle.
Stay right there.
I'm going to bring a reflector in for a little bit more fill on camera right. And you can see from one shot to the next, they're not dramatically different.
Keep the head tilt, turn the face a little more. This way, yep, good. Eyes are gonna come right here to start. Yeah, no, come right in here, that was my bad. Yep.
I'm building the idea as I go.
Eyes are right here. Now pick a spot because I'm gonna move my hand. So I'm gonna pick a spot right there, good. Right there. Okay, now relax your head for a second. Good. What I want you to do is take both shoulders and you're gonna push them forward, but then you're gonna lift the shin up. Okay, yeah. And the whole time I need your work to keep those shoulders hunched. Good, okay? Chin up a little higher. I'm gonna go ahead and let you tilt it this way and then turn the face back some. Good. A little more tilt. Actually, I know. You can bring the chin down just a little bit now and stretch it to me underneath. Good. Eyes right out here. Good.
So hopefully you see how particular I'm being about the pose, the posture, and everything that's happening. Little subtle differences make a huge difference. So you can't just say to your subject, put your chin down, tilt your head, do this, do that. By using the hand gestures and moving her and really deliberately making those changes, I also give myself an advantage. That advantage is by making those changes and having her do it slowly and giving her specific places to look, it's causing me to look closer at the elements in the shot. Where is her chin? How much is she tilted? How much are her shoulders curled? All of those things. It also helps me as the photographer pay better attention to those little details. And those little details are what come together to really make the shot work.
Okay, tilt your head a little more. Stop. Hold your head right there. Eyes are here. Keep your head tilted. Keep the tilt. Good. Eyes right here. Now push those shoulders forward hard. Good. Stretch that chin to me. Good. That's it. Tilt left. Good. Good. Chin up just a little. Up. Up. Good. Up. Keep the tilt. That's it. Good. There you go. There we are. Tilt more. Push the shoulders. 1, 3. I want you to inhale really hard. 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay, I missed it. It's all right. You're good. You're good. You're good. Relax. Yeah.
Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch the camera angle for you here, and we're going to go back through that sequence.
Right this top edge of my chin down to right there.
You can see she is just about 2 feet. Her head about 2 feet from the dark gray background. This is one of the rare times that you'll see me using a gold reflector, since she obviously has very warm skin tones, and I'm working with a lot of yellow and orange in the makeup, plus also knowing that I was going to add yellow and orange to the background. I went with the gold reflector to put a little bit more color into that fill.
That was my bad. Yep.
You can see also I've got a white Walmart reflector underneath to give me just a little bit of fill from the bottom.
Pick a spot because I'm going to move my hand. So I need to pick a spot right there. Good.
The reason you're not seeing the beauty dish light up, in case any of you are wondering, this is also one of the rare times that you see me use a grid on a beauty dish. And I'm doing that because I wanted the light to be very focused, very narrow. So since this camera angle is looking at it from the side, you're not seeing the dish light up. But I promise you the light's coming from that beauty dish.
It's the color. Because I had to make a new batch of color, it doesn't match it exactly. So this right here.
And this is another reason why you work with a makeup artist. Because your makeup artist is another set of eyes. She's a collaborator. She is part of that creative process.
Okay, now relax your head for a second. Good. What I want you to do is take both shoulders and you're going to push them forward, but then you're going to lift the chin up. Okay, yeah. And the whole time I need your work to keep those shoulders hunched. Good, okay? Chin up a little higher. We're going to go ahead and let you tilt it this way and then turn the face back some. Good. A little more tilt. Actually, I know. You can bring the chin down just a little bit now and stretch it to me. Underneath. Yep, good. Eyes right out here. Good. Okay, tilt your head a little more. Stop. Hold your head right there. Eyes are here. Keep your head tilted. Keep the tilt. Good. Eyes right here. Now push those shoulders forward hard. Good. Stretch that chin to me. Good. That's it. Tilt left. Good. Good. Chin up just a little. Up. Up. Good. Up. Keep the tilt. That's it. Good. There you go. There we are. Tilt more. Push the shoulders. On 3, I want you to inhale really hard. 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay, I missed it. Sorry, you're good. You're good. You're good. Relax. Ajax made a comment there that she's really good at holding that position. That's something that, there's a balance in terms of how you make that work, gang. Normally, and I say normally meaning for the majority of the photography that you and I are likely to do, we want a lot more energy from our subjects. From time to time, which is what you're seeing here, when I'm doing my beauty shots, I really am actually kind of turning my subject into a statue, intentionally. Normally, you don't want people to be that still and that stiff and kind of that lifeless. So I do want to point out that the goal is not to have your person sitting that still and that lifeless most of the time. In this particular case, it was very, very important because I had a very specific look and mood and kind of energy that I was working towards, okay? So what I want to do here is I'm going to switch back now. Again, there's the finished image in Photoshop, but I want to show you, and by the way, I'm sorry, I almost forgot, FN89. Thank you so much for the super chat. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And I want to go ahead and switch over to Lightroom here. So just to give you guys kind of the full background, quick overview, this is the entire shoot. Now, I have eliminated like blinks, test shots, etc. But in terms of the kinds of shots, this is the entire shoot that I did on this particular day with this model. We worked on these very high-key white background shots that you see here. Then I went with a white hood and did the high key with the hood, but I wanted to get more color out of that hood. So I went ahead and put her on a dark background, but then I added in gels, experimented with the pink first. Didn't really like the pink. Then I went to the blue, and you've probably seen that shot before. I used that shot quite a bit. Did another shot playing around with some color gels. It was okay, but you can see even by how few shots I did, I kind of really wasn't feeling it. My fault, not hers. So I moved on. And then we get to the shots that I did that you just watched. So there's a couple things that I want to make sure that you're all noticing. Take this as a challenge. Take it as a goal. You haven't seen inconsistencies in the exposures, right? As you're going from one shot to the next, etc., the exposures are consistent. I'm not going to lie, it really blows my mind how often I see photographers, they'll share images with me, share their shoot. And I'll say, hey, can I see the whole take? And the exposures are all over the place. Well, number one is, if you're doing studio work like this, you don't shoot TTL. You just don't, especially not with all those colors. Number two, you're shooting digital. And if you're shooting tethered, like I was, there's never an excuse for your exposures to be all over the place. So make sure you're monitoring your exposures, because I want you to notice how close these images are to the finished image, minus the texture that I added, right? But in terms of what you're seeing on her face, the exposure, etc., you're very close to seeing the finished image right out of the camera. So you saw I started out with these low angles. That's kind of where I built it. I went from kind of very straight up and stiff. I added a little bit of tilt to give it a little bit more of a dynamic feel. And then I'm going to play around with the chin a little bit, going up and down. Notice there's the chin push. Watch, here's before the push. There's after the push. You should be looking right up above me, right? Okay. Tweaking the tilts just a little bit more. I moved myself to camera right a little bit. Tried to make the head look a little bit awkward. And I can tell you honestly, I remember this very clearly. At this point, I'm still shooting away, and I hate what I'm shooting. It's not coming together at all. I went into it thinking, yes, because of the texture and everything, I had this idea that she needed to be strong and powerful, and I needed to have a really low angle, and I was absolutely hating it. And it's great because she has a really long neck, but and it's completely my fault. It's not about her or the makeup. I wasn't getting the right kind of awkwardness to the shot.
And I was also having a feeling in the back of my head that maybe in order to make this angle work, I needed to send her back to the makeup chair and have my makeup artist, Monet, take some more of those white beads and some more of that textured makeup, maybe put it on her neck. Like it was missing something for me, okay? So that's kind of where my head's at this point. And as I'm going through, I'm playing with more of these, tweaking a little bit where she's looking. This is all the stuff that you saw in the video clip, playing around with the chin, all that. Not really doing it for me. So then went ahead and switched things up. Sometimes I will do that knowing that I don't really like that angle or anything else, but it's just to visually disconnect my brain from where it was and what I was seeing and allow me to have a fresh look and to be able to kind of dive back in. So I tried that angle, but then very quickly came back to the other side and started working with that a little bit. And then realized for sure I needed to have her look at me. Her eyes are so strong and so powerful, and she does the no affect look, the just kind of dead look, really, really well. So at this point, I'm realizing, I've got to work with the eyes. And this is the image that I wound up working with. So you'll see the process here. And again, these are all little subtle pieces, subtle changes, excuse me. And I did go back to see, okay, should I take her eyes away? But you'll notice then I even start to bring the eyes back closer to the camera. Finished because I was kind of really getting stuck in the eyes with a very strong dead stare in the camera. Tried a lower angle of that. And then shot these last few with black and white in mind. So in camera, I had switched my preview over to black and white. And you'll notice the light is higher above her now for these last few. Again, it was just to kind of get a different look. So these last few were shot with black and white in mind because I took that light from in front of her and went almost above her. So as I mentioned, this is the one that I wound up going with. That's the one that you saw the finished image of. So here you're seeing the finished image. What I'm going to show you now is the PSD file. Now, a lot of times, because my images are going to go into videos in one format or another, I like to do my compositions at 16:9. If I'm working on a solid color background, I don't have to crop the image. I will shoot with the idea that I'm just going to expand the width of the image. So the first thing I did with this image, and by the way, even notice, not a problem. I don't consider it a mistake. I was very aware that I was doing it at the time. You'll notice here is the bottom edge of the beauty dish. It's a solid background. Takes literally about 10 seconds to make that go away and another 10 seconds to be able to do the content-aware fill to expand that background. And so that's exactly what I did here. I selected those two sides, and I'm not going to do a full Photoshop tutorial. I know some of you would like that. If you want Photoshop tutorials, I strongly encourage you, follow Unmesh Dinda from Pix Imperfect. He's the guy, hands down, okay? So did the content-aware fills, expanded the background. Now I've got the full clean background. I've got her where I want. I still have not done my retouching or obviously I have not added my texture, nothing. But now I've essentially got my base layer that I am going to work on, and that's right here, okay? From there, I am going to add in the overlay. Now, in fact, I saw somebody ask me an overlay here. Ajax said, the texture looks great. Was it taken from your own or did you purchase it? I purchased this particular one. Here is the actual overlay file. It's a concrete block. I purchased this as part of a set from envato.com, ENVATO.com. Please don't be the photographer that starts doing composites and goes to Google, clicks on the images tab, finds an image and says, oh, I'll use this. You would be furious if someone did that to you, if someone basically took one of your images and essentially stole it and repurposed it. Purchase it. You can purchase stock images incredibly cheap at this point. So frequently I will use stock photography websites like Deposit Photos or Dreamstime. Shutterstock is a great one, but it is more expensive. I mean, there's lots of them out there. But Envato has been building up kind of a stock library of the types of imagery that is very, very helpful for building textures and building composites and things like that. And part of what takes a little bit of practice, gang, before we even get into Photoshop, is being able to look at a picture like this and realizing kind of how that's going to look when you add it to an image. So you have to experiment, right? Because obviously in my finished image, it doesn't look anything like this because I've used blending modes and, et cetera. So we'll go back to the PSD. I have added in now my textured background over top, and I want you to notice I've changed the blend mode, where you can see it right above me there, to soft light. I have gone ahead and switched it to black and white, taken all the color out, and I've got the opacity dropped down to 30. If I pull the opacity all the way up to 100, you see a little bit more of that texture, okay? But I had it down at 30, and we'll be close there, right? That's good enough. So from there, I wanted to change the contrast on it a little bit and make it darker, and I still have the texture over her face. I haven't removed that yet, okay? Now in this next level, there's where I removed the texture, and I did that simply by coming back down here to the bottom, using just the magic wand and selecting the background, and then on this new layer, making a mask. That's it. Super, super simple. That way it takes the texture off of her face, and I'm good to go. Can't be any easier, can't be any faster, okay? And you'll find tons of tutorials on that online about how to do that simple masking. Super, super easy, okay? From there, I did my retouching. I want you to notice a couple of things, and I'm going to point them out. I want you to take a good look at her eyebrows. You see how the eyebrow fades off here? I'm all about details. Also, I want you to notice the piece of nose jewelry that you see right there. I want you to notice the tattoo on her shoulder, which does not add anything to my concept, right? So in addition to a few blemishes, she's got amazing skin, but I went ahead and filled in that eyebrow, cleaned up and removed the tattoo. All the little retouching pieces that I need, they're all done on that layer. From there, the under eyes, a little bit dark. Went ahead and lightened them, also lightened underneath the eyelashes a little bit, and lightened the pupils just a tad. From there, I wanted to notice how I have the highlights on the makeup down here because it was a little shiny. I added a layer that I have called Darken Makeup. The way you do this, and here I'll show you this little trick that can come in really handy. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to grab my eyedropper and I'm going to sample not the light version of the color, but the slightly darker version that I want to match. Now I'm going to select a brush, and actually that's a little small. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. And I want the brush to be very soft. You can see I've got it at about 33%, but I am going to change the blend mode on the brush to darken. And I'm going to set the opacity somewhere around 12. And please understand, when you hear me say, well, 30% or 12 or anything like that, when you're doing this kind of work, folks, there's no right number. The right number is the one that gives you the result that you like. So it's kind of like cooking. You always hear them say in the cooking shows when they're putting the seasoning in the pot, flavor to taste. So feel free to use those numbers as a starting point, but I'm not guaranteeing you those numbers will work great on your image. You may need to make adjustments from there. But then over that spot, I'm going to paint in and I'm going to darken it a little bit. So by doing this darken mode and sampling the color, I'm able to darken down that highlight without losing any of the texture or the detail. And of course, I would take a lot more time and do it with detail, but you kind of get the sense there, right? So I'm going to turn that off. I'll turn my other darken layer back on here. Then I use a action that you can find from Flern. You guys hear me talk about Flern a lot. If you're not going to watch Pixel Perfect, watch Flern, P-H-L-E-A-R-N. It's called the Flern Amazing Eyes. It's a great little plugin for really just getting that pop in the eyes. Now, flavor to taste, remember? If you are too aggressive with these presets for the eyes, your person looks like they're wearing ridiculously fake contact lenses. I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, I could see using it maybe for a character shot if I was doing cosplay or something crazy like that. I could totally see that being a possibility, but I'm not a big fan of overdoing that eye retouching. So you notice I'll turn it off, turn it back on again. I've run that action from Flern and then I've dialed it way down, all the way down to 39%. So I'm using it to get just a tiny little pop in the color in the eyes. Simple reality is, women of color, men of color, you generally do not get as much color in the irises of their eyes. You see me, you work with Monet, my makeup artist, as my subject in a lot of my video tutorials. She will frequently wear colored contacts because she likes the color, and I don't always color the eyes quite as much as she prefers. So she'll frequently show up with colored contacts in so that she's got more color in her eyes. So again, it's something to be aware of, okay? I'm going to up the saturation in the eyes just a little bit because I was feeling it was a little bit flat and a little bit unnatural here. So I'm giving it just a little bit more saturation. I really like where the eyes are at this point. Then this gray layer that I'm adding, this is a dodge and burn layer, 50% neutral gray. And you'll notice I'm just darkening her torso just a little bit because I want the face to be the brightest part of the image. Because I'm working with a beauty dish at close range and because some of this makeup is shiny and her skin was moisturized, skin's a little bit more reflective than I ideally would have liked. So this allows me to turn it down a little bit. Very, very light frequency separation. That brings me to this point. And then my last kind of final touch is just some vignetting with a brown color. So I didn't vignette with black. I vignetted with brown to really darken out the edges. And then I have my finished shot. So yes, it's a lot of steps. Yes, it's a lot of work, but I will tell you honestly, doing the background drop in works super, super quick. In fact, I'll go ahead. I'm going to turn all of those pieces off here just to show you how fast. And again, I'm not going to sit here and kind of tweak all the fine detail. I'm going to do a quick version of it to show you. But we'll go ahead. We're going to take the magic wand. In fact, actually, we don't need to do that now because now we can probably do select subject because Photoshop has gotten so much better. Yep, that's like pretty much spot on. So let me just go ahead. I'm going to copy that layer and I will hit mask. So now we've got, whoops, we'll leave that there. Now we've got the mask. All right. So what I'm going to do now is come over here, grab the grunge layer. I'll do select all, copy. I'm going to go back to this version and I'm going to paste it in. Now, obviously it's a little bit small. So edit, free transform, and we're going to stretch it out. And that pretty much looks like crap, right? Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the blend mode to soft light. Probably for my taste, I'm going to blur that background just a little. Now, when I say blur it, I don't mean like, crazy blur because that looks like a bad zoom background, right? So I'm just going to just a smidge soften the texture a little bit. And now here's the cool part. Now that I've got that, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and I could put an adjustment layer in between here. And there's a couple options. Let's say we wanted to do color balance. I could put a color layer in and I could start playing with color. I mean, obviously we're probably not, if we want a contrasting color, we could do green. Actually, that's kind of interesting. Maybe we'll meet that a little bit more that way. There we go. We can throw some more red into it there. Yeah, we'll kind of go in there with a little bit of yellow. And then we can even come in here and if we wanted, I could do a dodge and burn layer, which is a 50% gray layer. And now from here, I'm going to select black as my color and I'll select the gradient tool. And again, this is just experiment, gang, right? But with the gradient tool, I could start to go ahead and kind of almost make it look like I've kind of lit with a spotlight on different areas of the shot here. And I could play all day is the point, right? So it's really pretty simple to be able to do that texture overlay in a background. Tons of tutorials online. I gave you a very, very quick overview, but I would encourage you, check it out. It's a lot of fun, but that is how I made that shot work. So I hope you found that useful. All right, let's move on.
It's time for this week's photo quote and featured photographer.
Photography was a license to go wherever I wanted and do what I wanted to do. This quote comes to us from the American photographer Diane Arbus. Diane Arbus was best known for her very intimate black and white portraits. Arbus often photographed people on the fringes of society, including the mentally ill, transgender people, and circus performers. She was interested in probing questions of identity. Her image called Arbus's Identical Twins. In fact, whoops, that's the wrong tab there. I lost my identical twins here. I'll find you the image. I'm so sorry. Now I've completely lost the identical twins. We'll find them. But the shot, it's a very famous shot in 1967, and it brilliantly captured the underlying differences and the physical resemblance of twin sisters. Arbus was also quoted as saying that a photograph is a secret about a secret. The more it tells you, the less you know. She was born Diane Nemerov on March 24th, 1923 in New York, New York. She was raised in a very wealthy family, which enabled her to pursue artistic interests from a very early age. She first saw the photographs of Matthew Brady and Paul Strand while visiting Alfred Stieglitz's gallery with her husband, Alan Arbus, in 1941. During the mid-1940s, the married couple began a commercial photography venture that contributed to Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. She was burned out on commercial work by the 1950s. She began roaming the streets of New York with her camera and documenting the city through its citizens. Her images were later shown alongside those of Gary Winogrand and Lee Friedlander, who are both prolific street and portrait photographers. Unfortunately, having struggled with depressive episodes throughout her life, Arbus committed suicide on July 26, 1971, at the age of 48. In 1972, a year after her death, her first major retrospective of her work took place at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Today, her works are held in collections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, among many others. I encourage you, study as much as you can about Diane Arbus and her work. She was a photographer that was way ahead of her time in her appreciation for the things that make humans the same and yet uniquely different all at the same time. I'm going to share a link for you here in the chat, and I promise you I would show you the identical twins. I sincerely apologize that I missed that in my browser before, but let me switch back. You've all seen this picture. You will recognize it immediately. These are the Diane Arbus identical twins. So trust me, read her story. There have been documentaries made about her. Absolutely fascinating. Okay? All right. This week's Talent Under 30 is a young photographer by the name of Alex Schon. Alex is a 25-year-old wedding photographer who's based just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He describes himself as a wedding photographer for couples seeking authenticity. I first met Alex when he was 15 years old, and he had convinced his dad to help him build the DIY fluorescent lights that I had made for a YouTube video. It was clear then that Alex had a great future in photography, and he has established himself as one of the premier wedding photographers in the ritzy Philadelphia suburbs. Now, to know Alex, he's a bit of a Renaissance man. I would say he's born in the wrong period of history, but he brilliantly uses that to his advantage in creating his style and his marketing. Alex started shooting weddings primarily on film, but more recently he's transitioned to primarily digital due to the increasing costs and scarcity of film stocks. Alex has developed a light, airy, romantic style that shows the beauty and emotions of a wedding day in a magical, storied way. And for any of you that are beginning to start a path down the business of wedding photography, I would encourage you, take a good look through Alex's website. For a young wedding photographer, aged 25, while there is certainly always room for growth in terms of marketing, it's a brilliantly done website with excellent pieces to connect to his customers. So make sure you check out his work. I have the links to his work in the show notes, also his Instagram. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you those links here in the chat window now really quick. And make sure that those links are separated. There you go. Okay. And Eric, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. And folks, please remember, you can help me out and hold the door open for a younger photographer. If you know of an incredibly talented photographer of any genre under the age of 30 who is creating exceptional work, please share his or her Instagram handle with me so that I can check them out and possibly feature them here on TOGCHAT. I have a couple young photographers coming up in the next few weeks that are under the age of 21, and their work is incredible. And by the way, gang, when you visit the Instagram profiles of these young photographers, please follow them. They're at a point in their careers where the follows and the likes do count to help get their excellent work noticed by editors and creative directors. And I'm still waiting for the TOGCHAT where somebody asks me, why is it good for these young photographers to worry about follows and likes when us older photographers, everybody keeps telling us, don't worry about follows and likes, they don't matter. So whoever's going to be gutsy enough to answer that or ask that, I'll gladly answer it. And don't worry, I'm not going to embarrass you, but I'm waiting for that question to come up. Okay. All right. Another thing that I want to throw out here really quick before we dive into the Q&A, I've got a couple little odds and ends for you. First of all, let me switch my screen over here tomorrow night. For those of you that are trying to make money, or for those of you that are trying to build your social media presence, tomorrow night, February 18th, 7 p.m. Eastern time here in the U.S., I will be doing a program called Social Media for Photographers. I'll tell you straight up, this one's not a free one. It's $20. But if you are trying to build your social media following, if you are trying to market via social media, I promise you it's $20 that you will not be wasting. Okay? We dive into a lot of great information about, really honestly, the most important thing is how you should really be thinking about social media and what you should actually be trying to accomplish with social media. And then, of course, we get into the nitty-gritty of preparing your images properly for social media, which platforms you need to be on depending on what genre of work you're doing, etc. So that's coming up. Another thing that I have that I would like your help with. Quite a few of you are here. You watch me every week, and I love you for that. I've had a few people reach out to me in the past few weeks saying, Joe, you know, it would be really cool if you interviewed yourself for TOGCHAT. So I don't know that I'm going to interview myself, but here's what I am thinking. So I'm open to feedback. I am going to have another photographer, probably the host of another podcast, do the interview for me to happen here on my TOGCHAT. I asked the folks in my Facebook group a couple of days ago if they had the opportunity to interview me, what questions would they like to know? So obviously you folks listen to me every week and you still come back. So you've heard a lot of what I have to say and you've heard quite a few of my stories, but in the chat or feel free to message me. If you have a question that you would like answered, if you were interviewing me, please type it in. And I'm going to assemble these questions and I'm going to give them to this interviewer that I'm going to ask to do the interview, and I will not know which questions they are going to select. I'm not going to pre-prepare my answers or do any of that kind of stuff. But at some point in the next few weeks, I will go ahead and I will be the guest and I will allow myself to be interviewed. But I also want to let you guys know, part of the reason my voice is so scratchy tonight, and part of the reason why, honestly, I'm a little discombobulated. So yes, I'm making excuses. Excuses are bad, but I'm making excuses. I taught 2 classes last night, so I was up late speaking. And this morning, this is the part, this morning I did an interview with 2 young photographers from Spain. I'm not going to tell you their names. I'm just going to tell you next week. You do not want to miss this interview. I learned about these 2 photographers probably about 3 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And I am obsessed with their work. Their story is incredible. Their work is brilliant. And the interview went really, really well. Fortunately for me, their English is excellent because they are native Spanish speakers, obviously. But it was an incredible interview with some really, really great insights that we can all learn from. And I learned some things. So I want to let you know, next week, you don't want to miss this. So I apologize for the big tease, but I'm going to hold out so you come back next week. Okay? All right. So enough updates. Let's go ahead and dive into this week's Q&A, shall we? Make sure you check the show notes for any website or video links that I mentioned. If something comes up during the conversation, I'll make sure that I update them at the end of the show. Okay? Now, so we got a little bit of time here. Where are we at time-wise here? Oh, yeah, we got some time. So I saw a couple questions come in. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the chat. I'm going to start with those questions, and we'll go from there. But by all means, start typing. Get some questions in there, okay? The first one that I saw came in from, let's see, Cooley here. And his question is, any experience photographing schools, and what did you use to keep them organized, or keep the images organized? He's finding several options. So Cooley, way back in the day, I did not schools. Well, actually, that's not true. I did a couple nursery schools for a few years, but I did do a lot of like the Little League pictures and the swim team pictures and the miniature football team pictures and that kind of stuff. Back then, you don't want to know how we did it. It was brutal. These days, there is lots of software that's available, and I have not, unfortunately, used any of that. I did do a little quick research. Your question came in right before I started, so I did a quick search, and it seems from what I was reading, and again, this was just, 10 minutes of what can I gather. The 4 most popular ones are ProofPix for high volume photography, Drum's software solution, which is school photographers. Allegedly, this is put together by a set of school photographers. Got Photo, and the last one, High Volume Solutions is, I believe, what the High Volume Photography Solutions is what the company is called. So I would encourage you to start here. I will tell you this, none of this software is going to be particularly cheap. That's not bad, right? I mean, unfortunately, we all kind of get into this mindset, and I'm guilty of it too. It's like, how can I get it on the down low and not pay a lot of money, et cetera? And ironically, we're talking about something that we want to use to make money, right? So you don't make money by cheaping out on the support mechanisms, right? Certainly, you want to be aware of your costs. Certainly, you don't just want to throw money away, but you make sure you have the right tools, because if you have the right tools, you're going to be able to do the job faster, easier, better, quicker. And the key to this whole thing is make sure you're pricing properly, especially with high volume work. The 2 biggest mistakes that I find photographers make is, 1, they're not pricing right going in. And along with that, not pricing right, they're giving away too much to the organization or to the school. And then they're not being aggressive enough on the print sales by following up with the people they're photographing and really pushing the print sales. Because obviously the money's in the print sales. So if you're going to be really passive about that, my advice to you would be, don't even bother doing school photography. It's literally not worth it. you need to have a plan in place to be aggressive. So when I say be aggressive, I don't mean just like, follow up with an email that says, here's the link, log in and go buy. No, you've got to work a little harder than that. So I would check out those pieces of software, but do a couple Google searches. You will find tons of great articles written by photographers that do this type of work, that are sharing kind of their sales flow. They tend to call it a sales funnel. That's the phrase that you'll see. And I would encourage you really put a plan together, because indeed, high volume photography, so many photographers, when they get into it, they're like, oh my God, like I'm seeing big bucks. And then they kind of, number one, price themselves way too low. And then number two, they're not actually aggressive enough with making the sales. And so it actually just turns into a high volume nightmare. And they wind up leaving the high volume business very, very quickly. So hopefully we can save you that dilemma, right? Okay. From an FN89, we've got a business question here. And again, FN89, thank you so much for that super chat. Looking to put together different portrait packages for clients. Any recommendations on where to start? Just a baseline. I'm a member of PPA and I'm waiting for the business challenge. So, well, there's a couple things. Number one, I would say to you, since you're a member of PPA, make sure that you dig into the resources that are readily available right now on PPA about how to set your prices, how to structure your prices. All the packages in the world are not going to help you if you're not building your prices correctly in the first place. And what determines if your prices are correct? Well, there's two things. First and foremost, and most important by a mile, is how much money do you want to make as a photographer? And then you're going to work backwards. Well, okay, what do you want to make a year? How many weeks a year do you want to work? How many days a week? How many hours a day, right? And so even if you're working part-time as a photographer, if it's going to be a side hustle, you still use that same mathematical equation. That gives you kind of an hourly rate. And then you can look at the task that you're about to do. If it's a portrait session, how long does the portrait session last? How much time are you going to invest before the portrait session? Finishing, the sale, doing the prep, the planning, the consulting, et cetera. Then after the session, culling your images, prepping images for proofs. Are you going to do in-person sales, which is the smartest thing to possibly do? Photographers, you got to stop using the damn internet to sell your pictures. Stop. You're photographing people, which means you're standing in front of people, interacting with them, having a relationship, taking their picture. Don't walk away and shove the pictures up on the internet and hope they buy them. That is not the way to make money. The portrait photographers that are making bank, the wedding photographers that are making bank, they do what's called IPS. That is the acronym for in-person sales, period. So as far as the packages, one of the first places that I would start, FN89, is I would do a Google search for portrait photographers and then follow that by the name of the town or the city where you live in Ottawa. See what your competition is doing. See what your competition is offering. And I'm not saying this so that you copy them. I'm not saying this because you need to be the same as them. But at the same time, you've got to find a balance. And what I mean by that is, let's just say that you have 5 competing photographers that have websites with good photography and they're clearly getting business. And they're offering, package A, B, and C. And they're all very similar with this A, B, and C package. Well, if you wind up and you're offering package M, you're potentially going to confuse potential customers. Because in all likelihood, your potential customers are going to look at these other photographers as well as look at your website. So that doesn't mean you do exactly the same, but it means you build your packages with a little bit of understanding of this is what my potential customers are also seeing. So I need to build my packages in a way that I don't look like I'm so far out in left field, okay? It would be worth your while to do a little bit of, and by the way, there is quite a bit of information in the education section with PPA that you can look at right now that talks about packages and pricing. So you don't have to wait for the business challenge to do that. But I would also encourage you to do a Google search on using the word like sales and then a plus sign, and then do something like the power of choice or the problem with too many choices, right? You may have to try a couple of variations. there is tons of research about the psychology of choices. And I mean that in two ways. Meaning, number one, you don't want to give people too many choices because that handcuffs people. You know, we all tend to joke and we make it a female joke. I'm not trying to be sexist, but the joke is usually about women, about not being able to make up their mind, right? There's actually a lot of science and psychology behind that. It's not a female thing at all. It's a human thing. So number one, you want to be careful about how many choices. And number two, from a sales and a marketing standpoint, you're always going to skew the choices, meaning you figure out which package is my sweet spot, which is the package that I want to sell the most of because I can make the most money with this package. And then you're going to structure your pricing that does it in a way that people are actually rather foolish if they pick the other packages, right? You want them to pick that package, and then you still want to try and add on to that package, but you want them to pick that package. So you're going to build your pricing in a way that kind of funnels them to that. But if you're in PPA now, you're sitting with access to the greatest resources that are available, literally, for that topic. And, you know, by all means, participate in the business challenge, but you don't have to wait. There's tons of stuff there. So check it out. Okay? All right, next up, where am I at? Yeah, we still got a couple minutes here. Scrolling on down. And let's see. Really, you guys gonna let me off this easy? Okay, we got a couple comments there. Victor, what means the red and green marks in terms of the images that were selected and filtered? Okay. In Lightroom, and I apologize, guys, I've closed out Lightroom, so I can't bring it back up to show you, but Victor noticed that when I was going through Lightroom through that shoot, some of the images had red flags underneath, some had green. So there was only one green one, and that was the one that I actually processed and used, okay? The red ones were part of my narrowing process. So the way that I cull my images, so follow along, I have everything that I've done in the shoot. It's either already on my computer's hard drive because I tethered, or I download it from my camera discs, right? And then I do what I call a first pass. So remember, again, I use Lightroom. You can do similarly in, I don't use Lightroom. I use Bridge. You can do similarly in Lightroom, or for that matter, any software that allows you to do culling. But what I do in Bridge is I go through all of those original files, and it's kind of like yes or no. I go through them very quickly. So that means I'm going to wind up keeping more than I will ever use. And I hit the number 6, which flags it as red. Okay? So if I've shot 200, on average, a first pass through, I'll wind up with around 60 to 75 with red flags. So obviously, I still have a lot of culling to do. But the ones that didn't make that first cut, they will most likely be deleted. In other words, I will not file them for eternity. I don't delete them immediately, but once I get to the point where I'm actually retouching images, those ones that did not make the cut, that 125 images or so, they're going to get deleted. So the 75 that I saved, I'm going to open them up, and I'm going to go through a second time and use the number 3, which is the, for the little stars. And I will assign a 3 to the ones that jump out at me the most this pass through. That's going to cut it down sometimes by as much as 50%. Other times it could maybe be as little as 25% that it's cut it down. But then I'll take just the ones that have the 3 and I'll trim down using the number 4 flag. And at that point, I'm going to look at them. And if I still need to go again, I will take the number 4s, select just them, and I'll hit my 6 button again. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the red flags off. But I'm only looking at the number 4s. And then I'll go through them again with the red flags. So it's just a matter of continually weeding it down. You could do any variation of numbers, flags, folders, whatever makes the most sense for you. I find this allows me to do it fairly quickly and in an organized way, but I'm basically always whittling it down to 1 per shot. I mean, you saw how many images I had left from that particular shot. There's a lot that I could use that people would look at and say, hey, that's cool. But they're all just variations of the same thing. So I'm looking for one, right? That's it. Okay. Next up here, let's see. What do we got? From FN89. Okay. So it looks like we'll make this our last question for the night. You guys are going way easy. See, I make all this content for you, the interviews and this, and then you don't ask me questions. All right, FN89 for IPS, in-person sales. Would you do same-day sales? If so, I'm assuming quick calling session and then light processing to present to the client. So FN89, it really is going to depend on your business model and how you are presenting your work. What I mean by that is this. If you were doing photographs in an event and the goal was to make sales right away, then yes, I would do, quick calling and do same day, boom. For that matter, you may even do, X number of images of the person. And as they walk away from your set, there's a computer there where they're going to cull through the images right there. You have an assistant available to look at them. That's the extreme, not ideal, but that's very frequent for event type and volume type photography, if that's the case. If we're talking just general portrait photography where somebody's going to reach out to you and say, hey, I want a portrait of myself and my husband to, put on the mantle above the fireplace, then I wouldn't do in-person sales. You don't want to wait 2 or 3, excuse me. Yes, I would do in-person sales. I told you guys, I'm sorry, I'm exhausted, and it's not fair to you. I apologize. I wouldn't do same-day sales. What I would do, though, is plan on coming back at most a week later. And you want to have that scheduled before you leave. Like while you're there doing the shoot and everybody's excited, it's like, hey, so when are we going to sit down and we'll go through your stuff together? Now, you're not going to go through every single frame together. You're going to call your images down to a group of proofs. You'll do basic processing on them. You don't have to do all kinds of retouching and that kind of stuff. You do basic processing. And then if you're smart, if you're trying to do high-end work, you're also going to go invest in some stock images of different room types with frames on the wall. You can buy stock images that just have empty frames on the wall, right? So you're in their house, and let's say they have very Victorian decor. So you want to get some stock images of Victorian room decor with frames. You're going to put a couple of their images in the frames, on the stock images. And then you're going to go back, and depending on how much money you're charging, FN89, the really, really high-end portrait photographers, they'll go back 5 or 6 days later. They'll take a basket of high-end fancy snacks. They'll take a bottle of wine or champagne and glasses. And they get invited into the house. They open everything up on the table. They spread it all out. And they have a little reveal party. And they show off images. In fact, those same photographers will frequently travel with a large screen TV. You can buy big screen TVs now for like $100. You can buy duffel bags to put the boxes in so that they're safe. You carry them. You get the kind that had little feet on them. You set it up. You plug it in. That way you're able to show big images in the person's house. It's real easy. It takes you literally 5 minutes. Set up the TV, attach it with an HDMI cable to your laptop, boom, and you're good to go. And you show those images big. You don't want people looking on a laptop screen. You don't want them looking even on a 31-inch screen. You want them looking on a 45, 50, or 60-inch screen. And then you sell. And understand that the selling process is not just, here's your pictures, what do you think? The selling process is you building the emotional connection to those photos. Meaning, you're going to talk about, how thrilled you are with the photos. You're going to talk about how happy you are confident that they're going to be. In fact, you're even going to make sure once you know that they've honed in on that one shot, that one that they want up on the mantle, you have already figured out by the time they get there, what's kind of the fun picture? The one that they're not going to put up for everybody to see, but it's kind of fun. Maybe it's a little goofy. And by the way, you should have shot something that was a little bit more relaxed, a little goofy. You're then going to put that picture up on the screen once they've made that decision. And you're going to put that second shot up, the fun one. And you're going to say, guys, this one right here, you really ought to get yourself a 16 by 20 of that, and we'll frame it. And you hang that upstairs right outside your bedroom. That way, every day when you get up to go down to breakfast, you pass this image. Think about it, right? But that's how in-person sales is done. It's about storytelling. It's about emotion. Photographers, you got to understand, your photography, when you're a business person, it ain't about you. It ain't about your photography. It's about the experience. It's about the emotional connections that your photography can make with your clients. If you are not focusing on that, you're not making a lot of money. You're just not. That's how it works. All right, so now that I said that, of course, we get a bunch of questions here. So I'm going to do these last two, but that's it, guys, okay? D-Psycho. I have trouble going to that last one. I usually keep more than one, not more than 2.3 to edit. But then when publishing, I'll pick one, but I don't spend. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to process two, process even three if that's your system. As long as you're really only putting that one forward, D-Psycho, I mean, that's fine. At the end of the day, obviously, we're concerned with, what are you presenting to the world? And you only ever want that to be your best, right? That's the key. Danny Castro, would a black velvet background be better over a black paper background for a more dramatic look? Is there a big difference before I invest? Well, sure, there's a difference because velvet has texture, which means that, you can light that texture and create shapes and designs and that kind of stuff. Or if you're trying not to have any texture, then that black velvet can be annoying if you're working with your subject really close. If you're able to move your subject away, then that's not a problem. So unfortunately, Danny, there's no one size fits all. If you watch my video that is the DIY background video. In fact, here, I'll find it and I'll share the link with you guys. Let me switch over to the background on my channel here. I'm going to type in the word backgrounds. Let's see, where is it? This one right here. I'm going to put the link in the chat. If you watch this video, I use like a crushed velour, which is kind of like a crushed velvet. And you also see some ways that I light it and some things that I do with it. Very inexpensive, very easy to make. But at the end of the day, I would still want to have a paper backdrop to work with, right? So it's kind of hard to have a one size fits all. But certainly there are things that you could do with black velvet or a crushed velvet that you can't do with a paper background and vice versa, right? Okay, gang. So that's going to do it for this week. Once again, I apologize for being a little bit scattered, but I hope you got some great stuff out of this. You guys had great questions as always. Thank you for tuning in and for another great night of chatting about all things photography. Don't forget to download this week's podcast tomorrow. I hope to see you next Wednesday. Remember, awesome interview with two European photographers. I promise you, you do not want to miss. And you probably do not know these photographers. I had never heard of them until very recently. Their work is incredible. In the meanwhile, stay safe and healthy. And whatever you do, gang, please remember these words. Thanks for watching this episode of Tog Chat. Don't forget to download this week's podcast for even more Tog knowledge. The link is in the show notes. Now go and pick up that camera and shoot something because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios.